straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily.
It is still our office's position that 17-year-olds should not go armed with firearms.
Just off the heels of Kyle Rittenhouse's acquittal, his friend Dominick Black takes a plea deal. And
he's still here. He will probably outlive us all.
Months after this comment by prosecutors, real estate heir and convicted killer Robert Durst dies at age 78. Plus,
any suggestion that I am not complying with requests or orders or demands or search warrants about my phone, that's a lie.
The latest from Alec Baldwin in the Rush shooting investigation. And later,
the test came back positive for human blood.
Jurors are shown a bloody axe as Chandler Halderson stands trial for the murder of his parents. Law&Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law&Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. We have breaking news out of California on the death of Robert Durst, but we'll get to that story in a moment. We begin with our top story out of Wisconsin. The friend of Kyle Rittenhouse, who bought an AR-15 for him, enters into a plea agreement with prosecutors. Law&Crime's Anjanette Levy is here with the details of the plea. Anjanette?
Brian, Dominick Black had faced 2 felonies. They were intent to sell a dangerous weapon to someone younger than 18, resulting in a death. Now, after Rittenhouse's acquittal, Black has pleaded no contest to 2 county ordinance violations of contributing to the delinquency of a child. Now, Dominick Black did not appear in court for this hearing. His attorney was there for him, and this happened in the courtroom of Judge Bruce Schrader, who presided over Kyle Rittenhouse's trial. Now, Black was dating Kyle Rittenhouse's sister in 2020 and described himself and Kyle as being as close as brothers. Black said he bought the AR-15 for Kyle Rittenhouse before the protests in Kenosha, and that they had an agreement that the gun would stay at Dominick Black's house until Kyle Rittenhouse turned 18. Then, on the night of the shootings in August of 2020, Rittenhouse and Black had gone downtown to Kenosha to guard a car lot, and we all know what happened from there. Assistant District Attorney Thomas Binger explained why his office made this agreement and major downgrading. It is a major downgrading of the charges.
In the Rittenhouse case, this court ruled that the law 948.60 prohibiting possession of a firearm by a minor did not apply to 17-year-olds. That is a legal issue that could further be appealed and briefed. I personally disagree with the court's ruling, but I respect that ruling, and I believe that if this case were to go forward in this court against Mr. Black, that the court would reach a similar legal conclusion with regard to these 2 charges.
And Dominick Black, you may recall, testified at Kyle Rittenhouse's trial. Rittenhouse's attorney asked Black about that on cross-examination.
Mr. Binger can make a recommendation of prison, correct?
Yes.
And you're hoping that by you testifying, he doesn't make a recommendation of prison, correct?
Yes.
Probation.
There's no really assuming what I get out of this.
There haven't been any promises made. I'm asking you what you're hoping.
I'm hoping for whatever the best is I get. I don't know what it is.
Okay. Your attorney, Mr. Cotton, he's met with you and Mr. Binger and the detectives?
Yes.
Now, Assistant DA Thomas Binger, who prosecuted Kyle Rittenhouse and who is handling the Dominick Black case, said that he also agreed to this resolution of the case because Black was cooperative through the Rittenhouse investigation and testified for the state truthfully at the trial. But it appears by his comments in court that he did not believe that the state was going to get a conviction if they press forward with taking Dominick Black to trial. Brian?
Thanks, Anjanette. Joining us today is criminal defense attorney Bernardo Villalona and Terry Austin. Bernardo, do you think this is a strategic move, as Anjanette is telling us, by the prosecution because they didn't think they could get a conviction of Black after Rittenhouse was acquitted?
I have a problem with the decision by the prosecutor. I think the prosecutor should have still gone forward in regards to Mr. Black, because as of now, the way I see it is that there is no accountability for Mr. Black for purchasing or serving as a straw purchaser and getting this firearm that was ultimately used to kill 2 other individuals. So I think it was an easy way out. I think the prosecution should have researched the issue much more, because technically, if you couldn't prove the case from the very beginning, then you should have never charged Mr. Black outright.
Now, interesting, Terry, Bernardo is saying the prosecution should have taken them to trial. I'm asking almost in the flip, if Rittenhouse got an acquittal, don't you think that Black should have gone to trial as well and tried to get the same?
I actually think the plea deal was a good resolution. I mean, we know that, Rittenhouse wasn't convicted. And if you go after Black for having the gun and purchased it and given it to Rittenhouse, listen, it's going to save time. It's going to save money not to go after him. And the fact that I think Binger made a good point, the fact that Dominick Black cooperated fully, it had to be difficult for him. He and Rittenhouse were best friends. Kyle's sister was dating Black. And so, I mean, he got on the stand, he told the truth. And, by pleading it down, I think it was a good idea, actually.
All right, now, Anjanette, did Dominick Black have a lot of support from the public during all this?
It's interesting, Brian. It's not clear whether or not people in Kenosha were supportive of him, but people on a fundraising site certainly were. His aunt had set up this fundraising page on Give, Send, Go, and she set a goal of $100,000 for his legal fees. And as of this morning, he had raised more than $78,000. So there was definitely some support for him on some community forums online. Whether or not there was widespread support for him in the community of Kenosha, it's just not clear at this point.
Interesting, but thank you for that interesting tidbit of how much money was raised for his legal service. Of course, something very similar like that happened with Kyle Rittenhouse. Thank you, everyone. Now to Arkansas, as 19 kids and counting, Jana Duggar pleads guilty to a third-degree count of endangering the welfare of a minor. The star originally pled not guilty when the news of the case broke in December. While babysitting her younger siblings, one of the kids managed to get outside unnoticed. A neighbor saw the child and called 911, which led to the charge. Jana Duggar was scheduled to appear in court this week, but the change of plea resulted in an order to pay a fee of $880. The reality TV star's charge came on the heels of her brother Josh Duggar being convicted of downloading and possessing child pornography. A sentencing date for Josh Duggar has not yet been set. Still ahead on actor Alec Baldwin takes to social media to say he is cooperating with the investigation into the shooting on his Rust movie set. But first, big news out of California as real estate heir and convicted killer Robert Durst dies months after being given a life sentence.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law and Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law and Crime Network with YouTubeTV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTubeTV today and then locate Law and Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTubeTV. We put you in the jury box.
Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. Only months after a guilty verdict is handed down, real estate heir and convicted murderer Robert Durst dies at the age of 78. But as an appeal process was not yet complete at the time of his death, Durst is legally not convicted of murder. After years of medical issues and a recent COVID-19 diagnosis, the 78-year-old died of cardiac arrest on Monday at a hospital in California where he'd been taken for a test. This comes months after his conviction in September of last year for the 2000 murder of Susan Berman. In October, he was sentenced to life in prison. Ahead of that, Los Angeles Deputy District Attorney John Lewin made a startling comment about Durst's mortality as his defense motion for a mistrial.
What this is not a request for mistrial. What this really is a request for Mr. Durst to get a go home, get out of jail free card and never be tried again. And because there is no current acute situation that requires Mr. Durst to be hospitalized, we are talking about chronic conditions which may or may not get better. And again, Mr. Durst had very serious cancer in 2005. He's still here. He will probably outlive us all.
The lengthy trial continued, resulting in an eventual guilty verdict. Prosecutors say Durst killed Berman because she knew information about the death of his first wife, Kathy McCormick Durst. Though a body has never been found, Kathy Durst went missing in 1982 and was legally declared dead in 2017. Durst was Durst has been a longtime suspect in the case and was indicted for her murder last fall. In a statement, the McCormick family said in part, quote, although Robert Durst has died, the ongoing investigation into those who helped him cover up the murder continues. Durst's death comes just weeks before the 40th anniversary of Kathy Durst's murder. Philip Dubé explains what's next for legal proceedings in the New York case, given Durst's death.
No, under California law, no matter what the cause of death is, be it by, homicide, suicide, accident, misfortune, a defendant whose criminal conviction is not yet final on appeal earns the right to have vacatur of that conviction and all further proceedings. And that includes abatement of any fines that may have been imposed, any restitution orders payable to the victim, everything. It just comes to a screeching halt. And I'm not going to say that the defendant is posthumously acquitted, but it is the functional equivalent. So right now, he does not stand convicted, and he cannot be posthumously prosecuted in New York for the death of Kathy. So that's going to also come to a halt. So right now, there is nothing pending other than the Court of Appeals awaiting the lodging, if you will, of the death certificate of Robert Durst, so that they can end the appeal and vacate the conviction.
All right, let's bring in criminal defense attorney Bernardo Villalona and Terry Austin. Terry, you followed the Durst trial from day one. Your thoughts on his death so soon into his sentence?
Here's what I think, Brian. He has eluded conviction now 3 separate times. There's no question about it. Morris Black was killed and dismembered, but he didn't get convicted of killing Morris Black. He got convicted of dismembering the body. So he got away with murder there. He also was convicted for Susan Berman, but you just heard Philip Dubé talk about the fact that he's now dead. He can't be charged posthumously with that. He can't be having a conviction record now as far as that's concerned. And obviously for his wife, Kathy Durst, he's not going to be tried because he's now dead. So that family will never see justice. So I absolutely believe that Robert Durst, with his death, has now gotten away with murder 3 separate times.
Now, if that's the case, Bernardo, how would you measure justice in this case? Whereas, as Terry has kind of outlined, some of the cases seem to be abated by death. He barely served a sentence on this case after decades of being free. I can't imagine how John Lewin is sleeping well tonight these days.
Well, as you can see with Robert Durst died a man without a criminal record. He has died as a man that's gotten away with murder because he has no convictions. In fact, with Lewin, he probably broke his TV once he heard that Robert Durst died today because he technically served only a couple of months into his conviction. And now we're at where we started in the first place without a criminal conviction. Robert Durst, I feel bad for the families of these deceased people because while they made it to see a jury find him guilty as to Susan Berman's death, they didn't see him carry out his sentence.
Yeah, and as Dubé said and Terry echoed, technically not convicted of any murders based on California law and the posture in which the case was on appeal. So it looks like in one way, shape, or form, Durst kind of had one over at the end of the day of eluding conviction. Unfortunately, not as much justice for those families who have lost a loved one. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, we head to Wisconsin as testimony continues into week 2 in the Chandler Halderson murder and dismemberment trial. Plus, the latest development in the deadly shooting on the Rust movie set, what actor Alec Baldwin tells fans about his involvement in the investigation. Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. Actor Alec Baldwin says he is cooperating with the Rust shooting investigation, even though the actor has not turned over his cell phone to investigators. 42-year-old cinematographer Helena Hutchins was killed, and the director Joel Souza was injured when Baldwin fired a weapon on set last October. The gun was a prop but had a live round in it. In his first interview after the shooting, Baldwin claimed he never pulled the trigger. Investigators conducted interviews after the shooting, which made them aware of emails and text messages about the production. That led to a warrant for Baldwin's phone after the actor and his lawyers refused to hand it over without one. The warrant says the film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, said Baldwin was not supposed to pull back the revolver's hammer. She says someone tried to sabotage the set. Over the weekend, Baldwin took to social media to clear up what he calls lies about his cooperation with the investigation.
Any suggestion that I am not complying with requests or orders or demands or search warrants about my phone, that's a lie. The best way, the only way we can honor the death of Helena Hutchins is to find out the truth. That's what I'm working toward, insisting on, demanding that the organizations involved in this investigation do everything in their power to find out what really happened. That's all that matters.
All right, back to break down the latest in the Rust investigation is criminal defense attorney Bernardo Villalona and co-host Terry Austin. Terry, if you were Baldwin's attorney, would you be advising him against speaking to the public like this?
I would absolutely advise him not to speak to the public. Listen, I taught a public relations course at USC. The last thing you want to do when you're facing charges is speak to the public, because you run the risk of saying too much and you limit what your defenses could possibly be if you say something that will go against what you could claim later. So one thing you can do is write a very carefully written statement that says, listen, I send my condolences, I'm going to cooperate fully, but the best thing to do is say nothing at all.
Yeah. Now, Bernardo, how does a search warrant for a phone work? What can they get out of their search?
Ooh, with the search warrant for a phone, they can get anything and everything. So even if items are deleted from your phone, when a search warrant is executed on a phone itself, it is dumping everything: text messages, photos, videos, emails. If you have Instagram or social media messages, it will download all of that. Usually a search warrant for a phone ends up in thousands and thousands of pages of information, including your search history on Google as well as internet searches as well.
All right, we'll see where this continues. More investigation and warrants being issued in the Rust investigation. When we come back, week 2 kicks off in the Chandler Halderson trial in Wisconsin. Investigators share physical evidence in the case, including some personal items of the victims. Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. Week 2 of the Chandler Halderson trial resumes in Wisconsin as jurors get a first-hand look at evidence recovered during the investigation. Prosecutors say 23-year-old Chandler Halderson murdered his parents, 50-year-old Bart and 53-year-old Krista Holderson, in July 2021. After that, they say Holderson cut up their bodies and attempted to burn their remains in the family fireplace. Holderson is also accused of scattering parts of their bodies around southern Wisconsin. On Monday morning, several investigators took the stand, detailing what evidence was collected during the initial investigation. Deputy Greg Leatherberry showed jurors a bloody axe that was found in the Holderson family garage.
213 is a photograph of the axe that I collected from the garage.
And just to back up, this axe was kind of hidden behind some boards.
It was something that you had to look to see. I wouldn't say it was hidden. It was concealed by its placement. But if you had the right angle, you could see it was there.
Okay. All right. So Exhibit 214, can you please describe it?
Exhibit 214 is a photograph showing staining that is on the area of where the axe head and the handle of the axe come together. This red staining is consistent in appearance with that of blood. There's a biohazard sticker on there, again, because of the reddish-brown staining. The reddish-brown staining that is on the axe is human blood. I tested it with the phenolphthalein test, the presumptive positive. I then followed with the hexagon OBTI test to determine if it's human blood or not, and the test came back positive for human blood.
Bernardo, how would you rate this investigation? Was it thorough, or can you find any holes in it?
I haven't seen any holes in this investigation yet. All lanes and all signs lead to this defendant as being the person culpable for this horrific death of his own parents. It's sick how much things that we've seen that this man was capable of doing. It's like a movie, a horror movie that I've never seen. Probably Jason and Freddy all put together in one scene.
Now, Terry, we've got all these bits and pieces that we're obviously collecting from this investigation. How do you think the prosecution will use this evidence in their summation?
You know, it's interesting, Brian. This is all circumstantial evidence. They found blood on the axe. They found blood, or they had particles on the shoes from the area where he was walking. And all of that demonstrates that he was at the scene of this crime, that he was involved. And I think during summation, we're going to hear the prosecution talk about how gruesome this murder was. Like Bernarda said, it is worse than a horror movie. He not only killed his parents, but he chopped them up with that axe, and that axe is in the room with these individuals who are going to be judging the case. And their mind is thinking about how gruesome all of this was. And the fact that this is a son doing this to his parents, it really does show that he is a cold-blooded, heartless killer. It's bad enough that he killed them for whatever reason, nothing was justified, but that he dismembered their bodies and tried to hide it is horrible. So this is going to really, I think, have an impact on the jury.
Yeah, and from what you two are saying so far, it seems like there's quite enough information to do that as well. Thank you. And thank you for joining us here at Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.